you can only activate, unlock, awaken the most masculine version of your man or men in general with the depth of your feminine embodiment. When you see men or your man as held to the highest standard, and we're not talking about money or wealth or how romantic he is. This is not the deeply embodied highest standard that we can have in polarized relationships. What I'm talking about here is holding him in truth, being the embodiment of love itself, and holding him deeply in truth. This means holding him to the level of knowing that he is consciousness itself. That is what the masculine represents. And letting him be no less than that, letting him show up as no less than his divine masculine version of himself. Literally, as the God version, as the king version, as a child of God. I get asked so often, how do I get my man to do XYZ? Usually centering around being more masculine and really stepping up into the highest version of himself, into his purpose, into working harder, loving deeper. It's hard to find the right words for it, but for his masculine gifts, for his presence. Women want more, or the feminine wants more of the masculine's presence, of his container, of his leadership. And as a divine feminine woman, we're not talking about wounded feminine, we're not talking about the princess archetype here, where they still, and I'll make a whole other video on this, but they still expect to be able to fix men or have a sense of entitlement where, there's nothing wrong with standards, of course. Have your standards, make sure you have them. But entitlement in terms of, this is what the princess or the wounded feminine would say, is no personal responsibility for her own embodiment, for deepening her own connection to herself, from self-sourcing, from becoming first this whole and sovereign feminine, where her own divine masculine is developed enough for her to really give herself what she wants, what she needs, for her to fill her own void first. This is the deepening. This is the path of the divine feminine. This is as the feminine, your work inside of a polarized relationship. If you want to awaken this deeply masculine version of your man, if you want to attract men who are more conscious and more in their divine masculine, and really the men who are not takers but are givers, not the men who choose you, but the men who rise for you, to be in the presence of this feminine energy that he knows sharpens him. When we talk about high caliber masculine men, most people assume that we are talking about the typical high value dating advice, which is very surface level. Like it's giving women what they think they want, but it's like this mask over it. For example, I totally think that women, thrive when they're provided for. I'm personally provided for financially. But what I found in working in this space personally, this is why I have honestly had quite a spiritual awakening recently and really deepened into a whole new level of my own feminine energy. And what I found personally and with people that I work with is that these women want to be, and maybe this is you too, want to be provided for, not because they need it, right? Like, I work with successful women. They don't need the money. It's not that they can't pay for themselves. It's because when we get deep down to it, they feel held in this whole new realm of masculine container from their man, from the masculine. And ultimately, they feel more loved. Now, let's just go deep here. This is not they do not feel more loved by their man. It may seem like this. It may seem like we want to awaken this more masculine version of him so that we can get what we want. That's the princess archetype. That's the wounded feminine. That's the shell and the walls up and the feminine, I mean, maybe not the walls up here, but the feminine version that does not believe that she's really the power in her world. That's the feminine version that does not believe that she can ultimately get what she wants. Get what she wants unless it's something external, bringing it to her, unless it's this sense of separation where she believes the only way she can get what she wants is through a successful man, or even through her business, right? Or even through something external, not through her own feminine magnetism. And that's where we've been conditioned. That's where it's so wrong. It's just so wrong. Because ultimately, going back to, she thinks she's getting love from her man. What is actually happening here is, I'm just using provision as an example, but let's just use the masculine container. Let's not make it one thing or the other. When a woman is with a masculine man, like divine masculine, let's just say the perfect man, he provides a container of leadership, of structure, for her to fully go into this feminine pole that she gets to exist in the context of their relationship. And in that, it's not that she feels loved by him, it's that she is love itself. Herself, her existence, her goddess energy, everything about her in her feminine is the embodiment of love. And she gets to experience herself that way in this dynamic. It's not about getting something from him. It's not about finally getting safety or feeling a certain way or whatever the personal reasons may be. This is an opening for the feminine. This is her experiencing herself as the most magnetic version of her, the most radiant, the closest she can get to this human form embodiment of love. And that's what's so beautiful about it, is that polarity is not about getting something from each other. It's not about trying to become the thing that he wants you to be in order to obtain love, obtain the relationship, obtain this new lifestyle. That's where the mainstream disembodied feminine energy teachings just go so wrong. They operate from this wounded feminine place that keeps so many women stuck, who really just unknowingly want to experience themselves as love, want to be on more of this feminine path. They're called to it, but then the first thing that they're hit with are these toxic teachings that are not bringing you closer to heart openness, to heart-centeredness, but actually further away from awakening this truly deep masculine version of your man. All that this is doing is getting you more and more and more like in this cycle of transactional feminine or performative feminine, transactional masculine. That's all it can get you if you are still operating from princess archetype or the wounded feminine, really. And that's fine. Everyone's at a different place. If you go back and watch my original content, I mean, that is totally where I was. I will be the first to admit. So really, holding the masculine at this highest standard of truth itself, which really means being a mirror for him, mirroring back to him, not in this intentional way of punishment, but from your existence, being this mirror of seeing where he is failing. I mean, this is, the feminine sharpens the masculine here. So when a masculine man, a divine masculine man, is with this divine feminine woman, their polarity creates this vortex of personal growth, really, of evolving. I would say evolving into their highest self, but what this really is a deconditioning on both of their parts, coming back into them being really this child of God. And all of the modern conditioning and dating advice, and I mean, not just that, our societal conditioning takes us away from that. Everything takes us away from that. And so that's what the polarity is for, right? So when she holds her man in the mirror of truth itself, he either rises to it, takes responsibility, is in integrity with himself, does not blame her, does not blame anything external. He takes full responsibility and he becomes better. This is why I hate to use the word successful here, because it's not just that. There are plenty of successful men who are not in their divine masculine, for sure. But when we think about why does a more conscious masculine man desire the feminine in this way, it's not because she's more beautiful. I mean, sure, but it's not because of beauty. It's not because of, oh, she's submissive. No, not at all. What it is because, or what it is that she will hold him to this higher standard of either truth, which is love, or fear, which is lies. His avoidance, these are the things that like plague the masculine, right? His avoidance of presence, of purpose, of his own integrity, his own word, him defaulting to just going maybe into a feminine, right? Because we as women will typically have these masculine shells around us that we've been conditioned into. But for men who are not able to fully access that masculine, or this still pops up, of course, because no one's perfect, everyone's human, but for a man who really is in that deep masculine place, the things that the masculine struggles with is going into that wounded masculine little boy energy, or into this kind of warped, unhealthy feminine. And so when she holds up that mirror, a man who is committed to his little boy energy, his feminine shells, like anything other than full masculine presence, he will crumble. And that's fine. That's good, right? That is the point of the feminine. That is the point of the mirror. That's the test. It's not her nagging him and criticizing him and controlling him and trying to fix him and change him and trying to mold him and coach him into who she thinks he would be as the most masculine form of himself. No. The divine feminine woman who truly awakens and leaves the space for her man to step into this higher and higher and higher state of masculine being is the woman who witnesses. I wrote some things down, so let me look over here so I don't forget. But being the mirror of truth, it's not a judgmental thing. It's not a, oh, you're not good enough, you're subhuman, like you're disposable, which is what I feel like most of the more mainstream feminine energy teachings make men out to be. It's kind of subhuman, a wallet, a disposable being. And that is so far from love. That is so far from being love itself. That is not feminine in any capacity. That is completely wounded. And so when she does this, when she is the mirror, she sees past his triggers and his avoidance and his, everything that is holding him back from the most masculine version of himself. And she sees what he truly is underneath all of that. She sees him for the king version of himself. And only a man that's really in his masculine, and one that will awaken into that, like, again, I said, not from nagging, not from controlling, not from her, doing anything to evoke this. Not from her trying harder to get him to be this way, but from witnessing and standing firm in that. In knowing that all men have this in them, but only few will rise to the occasion. And what a gift it is to the masculine to be in the presence of a woman who calls him higher like that. Now, the masculine also does this for the feminine and in different ways, so not saying one is better than the other. But that's really what awakens his true masculine energy. Now, a woman can only do this if she is truly self-sourced, if she is in her sovereign feminine energy. Now, none of us are perfect, of course, we all have our moments, but for the dominant amount of time, she's in that sovereign feminine place where she does not need him to complete her. She's whole. She's whole all by herself. She has cultivated her own masculine so that she can give herself everything in her inner world, in her external world, wherever, that she needs. And she does not need the man, but she comes into this relationship of polarity because it's her preference, because she desires, because she's a feminine being, to be in that most feminine pole, and that context allows for her to do so. But 99% of us, 99% of women, are in this princess archetype, are in this wounded feminine, this wounded little girl, where she's not self-sourced. She does need from him, which she will never get. But she's under the illusion that what she needs and what's going to fill her is outside of herself, is with him, is with more money, is with the next, cart of clothing being ordered, with the next whatever, right? And it's just not true. And so quickly, I do want to invite you into, because this is going to be one of the most powerful courses that I've ever made, Sovereign Femme. This one's going to be absolutely potent and incredible. I really wanted to create this because there is such a gap between that wounded feminine and the princess archetype going into the queen energy, into the goddess energy, and really having the resources to do so. So much mainstream feminine energy teachings taint this and keep so many women here. So I am actually pre-selling this course right now, so you can get it for about half the price that it's actually going to be. The link will be below. And I'd love to invite you into it to really step into this self-sourced feminine energy, because that is the only way, I've learned this the hard way, that is the only way that you can call in these conscious masculine men, or even the man you're already with, a totally different version of him. The most masculine version. You can't call that in. You can't awaken this in a man if you are not in that depth of feminine energy yourself. You always will attract the mirror. You will always, always, always attract the mirror of your feminine energy, the depth, the mirror of the depth. So, for example, if you're 80% feminine, I mean, no one's going to be 100%, but let's say, let's just use a percentage here. If you are 80% in your feminine energy out of 100, you will attract a man who is 80% in his masculine. I mean, I would say that's pretty good. A very masculine man. A very deeply conscious masculine man who is not just masculine on the external, doesn't just look masculine, doesn't just have the money, isn't just a provider. Right? This is the kind of man who is consistent, who takes responsibility. Of course, we're talking in relationship terms here. Who holds his woman's emotions rather than gets defensive or reactive. This is the kind of man who he brings safety. He doesn't make you feel safe, but he brings safety. He brings this level of connection to the relationship. He brings this level of presence so that you get to show up as the embodiment of love. You can't do this with a man who's in his little boy energy. You can't do this with even a transactional masculine man, right? Another thing that I see a lot is women coming to me who are provided for, and there's something missing. There's something more that they want. There's something missing. They feel like there's a void in love, in the connection, right? They thought being provided for or being with a man with the external signs of masculinity was the best, the cream of the crop, which is great. But when the spiritual depth is missing, when he is not holding up to your divine feminine mirror, it will feel like something is missing, something's off. You don't fully get to experience yourself as love, even if you do outside of the relationship, which typically wouldn't happen because you are attracting that reciprocal. But it's not the satiating context that really allows your feminine to thrive. And so once again, my course is on pre-sale, Sovereign Femme. Totally love you to be in it and experience that transformation yourself. I will be adding 12 modules to this course, so it'll be absolutely incredible, and I would love to have you in there. But this is so important because even if you go to the next man, even if you go relationship to relationship to relationship, even if you learn all of the feminine energy things and you think you are knowing how to act, you're softening yourself, without that truly self-sourced power, that self-sourced feminine power. This is not saying to become more masculine, not at all. But without that self-sourced feminine power, you will always be looking for safety outside of yourself. You will always be looking for love outside of yourself. I think that's the main thing that women are searching for. You're always going to be looking for validation outside of yourself, and that's exactly the kind of man that you will attract. He will mirror that back to you. You're searching for love. He's definitely not going to give you enough, right? It'll never feel like enough. You're searching for validation. These men will not validate you. And what's so interesting here is that when you step into that self-sourced feminine, that sovereign femme energy, the queen energy, when you step into that, that's when, you validate yourself, and then all of the validation comes from your man too. It can only mirror the depth of consciousness that you are at. So, last thing I want to say here is, if we want to kind of circle things around, as you hold him in the truth of who he is, in the truth of what consciousness is, he holds you in love. He holds the container where you can fully be free, fully open your heart, fully go into the depth of your divine feminine, where you are the embodiment of love itself. And that is when you feel fully met in the relationship. That's when you're so radiant that of course he claims you. He doesn't choose you. Like, there's this concept of be chosen by him. And he doesn't, you don't want to be the woman that's chosen. You want to be the woman that is fully claimed, risen for, that has the man that is showing up in his most divine masculine, matching your depth there. And that is always what you will get. So I'd love to hear in the comments below how this resonated. And once again, just so you don't miss it, I want you to get in at the best price. I do have Sovereign Femme on pre-sale price right now. It will be going up in a week, and I would love to see you in there. This is a self-paced course, so I will be uploading all of the lessons in the next few weeks whenever we actually launch it. And it's going to be absolutely incredible. So I love you so much, and I will see you in the next video.